All right, guys, welcome back to another podcast. We're sitting down with another special guest today, so stay tuned. Here we go.
Welcome to the podcast.
Wardrobe change, real quick.
Temperature will be more acceptable.
There.
Did we do it?
Is that, no, we're
way past it.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
at least 10 seconds past.
Okay,
so
sorry.
We're
I
fine.
had to quick take my jacket off.
Sometimes you just need a little bit of humor in your day.
Yes. Yeah, quick wardrobe change. Yes. So okay, here we are, sitting down
man.
for another podcast. Rachel Ducat sitting with us today. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we kind of talked a little bit before the podcast, just that, as we're kind of starting on our industry overview, we're kind of swinging that pendulum from sort of the culture, core values, and education side, and we're kind of switching over to process, but as process is a bit more mechanical, as we get through all of that, it's more so in just saying, like, who are you and how you got here and how we sort of try to be different. So, I mean, just ask the first question. I mean, where'd you come from?
Who are you?
Who are you? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I am Rachel Ducat, and I came from Michigan, and I worked out of the government. So I was with the Department of Health and Human Services, doing casework, food stamps, Medicaid, all that kind of fun stuff.
At the state level.
Yeah, at the state level.
So your background originally, the degree you have is in?
Healthcare Systems Administration.
Yep.
Yep. So I got a bachelor's at Ferris State for that. And then out of internship, started working right out of one of the major hospitals in the area, doing financial counseling, and also worked, third shift in the ER, doing registration. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was what always sort of intrigued me too, was that, especially for us when we're making this swing of the pendulum over to process, is I think what we have always focused on internally is the serving the middle 60%. So the idea is, of course, most of your veterinary practices are top bonded, where they focus on the top 20% of their clientele. But for us, it's how can we continue to get down into a range where services may not necessarily be as affordable or available, or if they are available, they're too expensive. What financing options do we have? But I think that's what I always found kind of fascinating, is that, again, I have very little contact with the human healthcare side. I mean, I hear some, but just that sort of like ground level, it's maybe not necessarily like, what financing option these people have, but it's more so on like, well, what state benefit do you actually qualify for in this setting?
Yeah. It was a very fast revolving door.
I imagine.
For really, I mean, because it is that it's not an age demographic. It's not, it's just that 60% or whatever, so that was always the first step within the financial counseling and registration, was how are we going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And when, not that it would affect the care that they were receiving, because a lot of times the doctors and, they didn't know, but
the doctors weren't aware of any financial state of the actual
not
patient.
until it came to like the higher bills, when
Higher
they were, if they were,
diagnostics.
if they were inpatient and that kind of thing, then we'd have to go meet with them.
But then I think the other thing too was that you were in a Catholic hospital.
Yeah.
So that was another sort of layer on top of it, as far as service availability, I guess, in that point, was that you guys, at least in some regard, were seeing more or doing more for some patients that maybe some of the other hospitals in the area weren't.
Yeah, there's two major hospitals in the area, and
In that area.
Yep, and over in Michigan, and the second one, they were up on the top of the hill, and they were able to turn people away.
Sure.
But we wouldn't. So we would get a lot of, people coming over, they wouldn't see us because we didn't have this or this. Okay. And part of the process was to find out what kind of state assistance or, what kind of other options are there. And when there wasn't, then we would usually end up do the,
This is what could be done.
which
Yeah.
would be writing it off, you
Yeah.
know, or whatever, you know, it could be,
Yeah.
but, you know.
Yeah, which again, I think that
Which we had the availability of doing. The other hospital, I don't think they did.
yeah, and I think that's, you know, when we look at the veterinary profession as a whole, I mean, I think again, as we're swinging over to this process side, I think that's where we often start to fall into this world where, now again, I'm not saying that, you know, Catholic hospitals are pulling a significant amount of money from, you know, the diocese or so on and so forth, but I'm sure there's some movement of money, at least in some capacity. But when we start to look at sort of the culture part, or at least culture issues that we see in our profession as it specifically relates to business, because up to this point, we've been talking about culture as it specifically relates to like core values, you know, so what we often get a lot of times, if again, we jump back to on our industry overview, the culture section, when we start to talk about this failed bond spectrum alignment, you know, there's ununified profession and failed engagement. But when we jump into that disparagement category, disparagement kind of goes a couple of different ways where, yeah, fine, maybe as a clinic, we only see fur babies. So as a clinic that only sees fur babies, if we get a working class individual in where they have a yard dog, you know, that's going to be at least some disparagement that the staff may show. Now, I'm not saying in every circumstance, but they may show that towards. But when you look at kind of the other side of culture and disparagement is where a lot of times veterinary professionals are stuck on the cultural side is, well, this is my child, this is my fur baby. And there's a guilt component as far as saying, why won't you do these services? I'm going to potentially disparage you online, or I'm going to tell everyone how terrible you are and how much money grubbing you are, and, you know, all these different things, and trying to sort of twist the culture side of the profession on how the veterinarian may be attaching to, or the veterinarian's own definition of their human animal bond to the technicians or veterinary nurses' human animal bond. That gets manipulated on the client side for us as veterinarians. That's where, again, for us, we try to, our solution to that is maintaining neutrality, you know, of course, where we treat everyone as equals, whether it's a yard dog or a fur baby, everyone's treated as equal. But when it comes into process in most veterinary clinics, the thing you sort of say is, well, you know, in a human hospital setting where there are some hospitals where you have the availability of turning people away, others where you don't turn them away, and then that turns into a write-off. It's a similar process on the veterinary side where it's like, well, if you're in a clinic where through cultural disparagement, you aren't actually turning any clients away, it turns into essentially write-offs, you know, is essentially what it ultimately turns down to. And like I said, as we're starting to merge now process into culture, that's a really similar thing that you'll find in a lot of practices. And the issue is essentially write-off. I mean, when we, I'm trying to think, do you know where we're at for the year as far as write-off, if you're going to ballpark it? Ben probably doesn't.
I think it's 54.
100?
No.
No? 1,000?
Isn't it?
I was saying like, no, not 100.
No. Yeah, no.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it's more than you would expect.
Yeah. It's probably a number that I should know. I'll just put it to you that way. As a business owner, I probably should know. However, that's where kind of Rachel's job is, that as she comes into our organization, because in years past, I mean, basically what I was driving at was for several years, our write-off, at least in the first couple of years of PAW Health, our first couple of years, it was probably like in the 10 to 15,000 category.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew kind of, as you'd imagine, as you know, quantity goes up and quality maintains with an increase in quantity, which is what we're shooting for. We're shooting for more quantity, but maintaining a high level of quality. It's the nature of the business, you know. So I know for myself, I still have that sort of ongoing drive where I'm like, we can probably eat a certain amount of write-off each year, you know, and if that means that some of our patients get a better level of care that they wouldn't have received anywhere else, I'm okay with that, at least from a certain percentage standpoint. But the issue is with that, and now again, I'm getting a little bit on process from culture, is that it becomes way too close to favoritism. It gets way too close to one veterinarian or one business owner being able to make the decisions on who is allowed to have a write-off and who is not allowed to have a write-off, and who we are extending payment arrangements to and who we aren't extending payment arrangements to. And then if the business owner is the only one who can do that, then the associate veterinarians, you know, who may be working the brunt of the shifts, say the business owner is pulling less than 10% of shifts, the associates are pulling the other 90. Well, those associate vets are going to to be seeing 90% of the other cases
Right.
that probably would be receptive or, from a financing standpoint. But then it's this small tapered portion of, oh, well, it's just he's the only one or she's the only one who can make decisions because they own the place.
Not today. He's not here.
Yeah, he's not here today, So that's where I think, we start to say, well, when we talk about failed process, and again, that sort of goes from, if you look again at our industry overview, and we start to say that from the culture to, coming from culture to service over to process in our industry overview. I mean, that's one of the big things on this lack of infrastructure is it's an antiquated business practice.
Yep.
There just aren't uniform policies on how that applies to everyone, So that's, again, like I said, it had always kind of it was always something I found interesting about the human healthcare side, where I didn't know that prior. It was like, oh, some hospitals kick you out, other ones can't. Well, the ones that can't or don't, what are they doing? And it's I mean, obviously they're writing off large amounts, but those, on the other side of the coin, those hospitals wouldn't stay open if all they were was in the negative. So they probably even also
Right.
still have, and again, we don't necessarily need to talk about exclusively the issues within the human healthcare system because they are substantial. But yeah, so to take that as kind of your first experience right out of school, to be honest.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because the first, the office that I did my internship in was a residency program. So.
Oh, like a long-term living?
No, like students. Yeah,
Oh,
student
students.
doctors.
Oh,
Yep,
gotcha,
so it was
gotcha.
Yeah, so because the hospital it was a teaching hospital.
Gotcha.
And still is.
Oh, gotcha,
Mhm.
gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yep. So the office that I was in was only for low-income families.
Gotcha.
Refugees and that
Yeah.
whole.
Yeah, bottom
Yeah.
5%, bottom 10%. Yeah.
Yep. So that was a big eye opener. Coming out of college, being raised middle class, going to college, already having eye-opening experiences, and then going, to a hospital, and then it's,
Yeah.
that empathy and all that goes along with it. But that's kind of where the bottom was, and then just moving up within the hospital in different areas, you start to learn, like you were saying, the certain case managers can do certain things, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear-driven decisions by patients. You know? And then
Yeah.
you get the language barriers and all that. And it's,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of different.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that is one thing we definitely luck out being in north central
Yes.
Wisconsin is no
Very limited.
very limited
Yeah.
language barriers, but
Yeah.
that's a completely different element. Especially when you're talking potential loss of human life, depending on if there is something not conveyed appropriately,
Between all of the things that you guys have been touching on too, you've hit other problems in a significant lack of accountability,
Yeah.
right? So when you have like the case managers that can call the shots, but then the other ones can't,
Yes.
like you're going to have, from the rest of the team, accountability is going to go down. Victim mindset's going to go up because
Yes.
I don't have the authority to do this. Therefore,
Yes.
I am now, essentially being wronged. You're touching on the financial aspect of the pillow of insurance, right? And how other structures, because of this, can exist and still have significant amounts of write-off.
Yeah.
And other ones just don't go through the process of it.
Yeah.
So that's just a choice.
Yeah.
Right, so you're hitting on a whole bunch of stuff
Yes.
that we've touched on, and
Intermittently,
right,
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny how you and I have spoke very little about your history, and it's just like, that makes complete and total sense
Yes.
from my perspective.
Yeah.
Mind
Yes.
you, I've thought about this on nonstop for 3 years.
Yes,
but
it's once it gets in your head,
What I've
it
been
doesn't
doing.
get
That's
out.
what you've been.
I've been
for 3
thinking
years.
about you nonstop for 3 years,
Yes.
Rachel.
Yeah, and it's finally come out.
I
on
met you a
radio.
year and a half ago.
Right.
However,
I have that effect on people.
Yes. Sure. Yes. Hilarious. But no, Ben, I think you're exactly right. From a culture and core value standpoint, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff in a veterinary setting absolutely starts to break down trust. Gone. And saying some
You
can,
have a
some
hard time
can't.
trusting yourself.
Yeah,
Like
right.
this is the right thing I should be doing. Why am
Right.
I?
So clarity on process. That's another big, that's again
Yeah.
sort of our antiquated business practice is having a lack of clarity on process or consistency on
I was
process.
going to say an alignment consistency,
Yeah.
because if one, like that's if the night crew does something but the day crew does it a different way, it's like that's just automatically you're just going to start to build walls between people for absolutely no reason.
The consistency in communication's got to be there.
Yeah.
You know,
And that's kind of the joke we make about, they say that the post-midnight rule.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which had gone unspoken for a period of time. And then some of my overnight people started saying after midnight rule to some of the day crew. And I'm like, you got to shut your mouth. Like, be quiet. I'm like,
This is for us.
Yeah. I was like, listen, we have lower caseload at night. We get a little bit more luxury in what we can do. And then, dime me out. Anyway, but no, yeah, like I said, between the core value breaking down and, because again, I mean, we can't ignore, this whole time we've been talking about culture and core values simply from almost exclusively a bond spectrum alignment standpoint, from a performance standpoint. So how are we actually doing in the clinical setting? That's been our whole discussion about core values, but this is as we start to merge over to that process side, you then start to have this next layer of essentially core values breaking down and loss of mission and all that type of thing, loss of purpose. Then your fulfillment goes down as you know that there is an accessible solution for some patients, but not for others, simply on the judgment of one person. That's messed up.
Right.
And that's unfortunately one of the foundations of most practices, even if it's unspoken.
Yeah. And a lot of it too comes down to resources. You know, you have one case manager that is on it. They know what they know what pharmaceutical companies to go to get, the sample, drugs for, because a lot of those big money accounts are cancer patients, with that hospital and whatnot or what. And, so to have the not only resources but contacts within the hospital to be able to get what you need. And if you have one case manager that does, but then another one may not be aware of it, and that's what I really learned when I got into it, because I went that extra little piece on building that relationship with the case managers. And then I was getting calls all the time. Hey, are you able to do this, because they just aren't aware of it. So then
it's still subjective, though. It's subjected to the guy that's in the room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there is always going to be some level of that, because you're never going to have 100% consistency between two people. It's like our doctors do practice. There is some variability within that, having the availability of resources in that setting, or even not even availability. It's just the knowledge of it, right? That's going to come from time, experience. Just if you drive, you come across the unique case where you have to explore all of your options and you just naturally learn it, right?
Throwing getting burnt out in it.
Yeah.
And it's just gonna.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's, I think even to bring out burnout into that is exactly that. You have someone who runs, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but we start to talk about someone who has a high competence in their field in order to be able to do this. They have both the competence and the confidence in order to execute it successfully. But then, then we start to look at quality and quantity, where now they start to just get too much quantity because they are good at what they do, and it's reliable that they can do it. So if you're reliable at your job and you're competent and you're confident, then by virtue you're going to take on more quantity, which is going to drop your quality.
Right.
Which also drops everybody's quality below you, because they're just expecting that you're going to do it.
Exactly. Rescue it.
So, and not having that clear, that clear communication on who's responsible for, so it comes down to that accountability. You've got one guy paying, getting paid to watch the other guy doing his job.
Yeah, the bullshit job, as Ben had brought up a few podcasts ago, was about, but so then again, we start to look at the quality, quantity, confidence, competence. That person burns out and they're gone. Then what?
No, we start all over.
Yeah.
Now we have to find that person again that is going to,
And you hope. You would hope then in saying, okay, so if you
you hope,
you would hope.
You hope a lot.
Yes.
Yep.
Operative word.
Yeah.
But it's talking about Star Wars before this, right? Like, when's Luke Skywalker gonna come around again?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then it comes into that whole, so then there's a position that's open. They bring somebody in who they believe is competent to fill that role, and the staff doesn't trust them.
Yeah. Right.
So they're already, strikes against
who's this
them.
Person coming into my space?
Yep.
They're not.
And then it comes to the whole culture thing. Yep. They're trying to do their job.
Yeah. Well, and I think
but they're not doing the other person's job.
Yeah, right.
So
yes. So someone comes in with someone comes in with fresh eyes into a managerial position, then looks at the people under them who have been rescued for months to years at that point, and their job expectation. The new person coming in is like, you're not actually doing what you're doing. I'm here because I'm coming in with solutions. I want to do this job. I'm confident and competent in doing this job.
But I don't want you to show that I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, right. And that, we talk about it, that is my fear ultimately of having a corporate infrastructure, is just, I said it, I think several podcasts ago, was then you restrict the flow of solutions.
Right.
So if you essentially have sort of these middle managers, let's say. So let's say you say the person burns out and they leave. You hope someone fills a good position. There's someone under them who has been rescued, so they're low performing, but someone just under them. So now a ground floor employee who's they're seeing problems day to day to day to day to day. Maybe they do or don't have solutions to it. Maybe they do have solutions to it, but it can't get past your middle managers to get up to people who actually require or make the decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, where our biggest focus when we start to talk about process and the future of the industry and PAW Health being something different than what's currently there, it's the local influence component. It's the local influence, you know. So, and I think the local influence, you know, for us, because again, we're talking about kind of bridging this quality and quantity and saying, well, if you have a centralized hospital where it's a veterinary hospital, right? Massive. They don't really exist, but we're just going to fast forward about 15 years.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, exactly. Yet. But you move forward and saying, okay, well, now we have this, like your experience on the human healthcare side, a hospital that maybe wasn't necessarily chain, right? So it was just sort of independently owned. But in any event, saying, well, now it's so big that now you have a corporatized structure internally. So now you do have a locally owned practice, but processes are so corporatized that now it becomes inefficient for a different reason. And I think that's what we talked about at Katie's podcast last week, was for her to work in a corporate setting, but then in a locally owned setting, it was similar problems in different ways or different reasons why it happened. But that's, again, one of my big concerns in moving forward with maintaining local influence. But I still believe that is the only future, to have multi-regional, multinational type organizations. It's going to be incredibly difficult just from a hierarchy standpoint in order to maintain that level of local influence. It just
I was very surprised by from, you know, because growing up, I mean, it was in the area that we were in.
Yeah,
so
right.
we saw what it was, and then, you know, graduating, going there, and just in that, let's see, how many years was I there? 3, 4, 5?
Yeah.
Just feels like forever. Yeah. The development in the different departments, and, you know, the cancer research came in, and then there was these little pocket clinics and
satellites,
you know, labs, and, you know, so then everything is all still under that one umbrella, you know, and I will say they did a pretty good job on making it all like one family, you know, so there wasn't that disconnect or anything, and there was still that like homey feeling. There's a
break point on that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, I think that's, again, too, when we look at sort of how some of your veterinary practices are set up. I mean, Ben, when you were at the talk here a week or two ago, whatever it was, it was still the ongoing discussion of family.
Yeah.
Is it the family practice, you know, the family setting, you know, and I think it's a matter of, again, where do you gain fulfillment, right? So if you have individuals that are pulling a significant amount of fulfillment from their workplace, and a significant amount of that fulfillment in the workplace is gained by having a family feel, that's going to essentially be one of the bottlenecks of progress, because as you start to bring in more talent, because the company is growing, because your quantity is going up and you want to maintain quality. Well, one of the ways in which you maintained a high level of quality is actually because your quantity of caseload was low. You know, so as you then start to increase the quantity and saying, all right, well, now we have to hire on more staff, more employees, and those people don't want to work in a family environment. They want to work in a professional environment. They want to work somewhere where there's a higher level of accountability. And I think when I say, like a month ago, I feel like I talked about firing grandma, you know, where it was like, you know, you got a lady who's, you know, sitting at the reception desk, and she's been there for, you know, 35 years, the whole 35 life of the whole practice. And it's like, this one person is a significant barrier to any type of progress in process, with computer systems, to, you know, billing, to financing. That
was a big reason why I ended up leaving the healthcare system, was because in order to, you know, my degree was healthcare system administration. I had a very big interest in long-term care, and was super excited, you know, coming out of college and having the knowledge and wanting to go into events and activities with, you know, elderly and all of that. Oh, you mean those aren't available? Oh, you mean those people stay in those positions forever? Oh, okay. So
they go from being the receptionist to a attendant, you know, to a resident.
So, and I literally had an interview lined up And, it was, not that it matters, but it was, sorry, we actually hired somebody already. So we're not going to need to do your interview. Oh, dang. All right, so position's been filled. And she said, yeah, I'm actually surprised because the woman finally retired. But these positions, they're held up for 30 years.
I was going to say, you probably have a list
You've
of
got a career there.
applicants for.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but those, in the long-term care, they're smaller. You know, so they're not the big. But even at the hospital, too, it was, there's no movement.
I feel a tangible level of stomach pain right now because that just sounds awful.
Yeah.
This is why I would never function in a setting like that because, this is what I just heard. Somebody with new ideas and a ton of energy was just shut down by people and process.
Yes.
Yeah.
It entirely.
Yeah.
Nah, we don't need that.
Yeah.
This is the way it's always been done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the sad part about it too, in the first office that I was in at the hospital, during my internship, the residency program, there was grandma. She was the receptionist, and she had been there when it was just a tiny clinic, and she had literally been there since she was in her 20s. I'm
sure.
Yeah.
And they were trying to force her into retire. Have financially she couldn't.
Yeah.
So it's there's no within.
Yeah.
What do you have?
Well, and I think that does bring up another point is, especially when we start to focus on the veterinary side. So, and saying, okay, so we do have this individual, because we know that historically, the numbers are out. It's a nationwide problem that people are underpaid in the veterinary profession. This is no new news here. We talked about it last week about the 3 technicians leaving to go to Quick Trip. We know that historically we have a high burnout rate and a low rate of pay. That wasn't better 25 years ago.
Right.
So if we're saying that now, like you had just identified and saying, well, we have someone coming in, new ideas, progress, make things better and improve. It's well, we can't fire grandma because she's been so underpaid for the last 30 years or 35 years that now this dedicated long-term employee, we can't, because she's been with us we care for her, we care about her, we want her to move on, but she can't. It then becomes basically you're stuck on both sides. For me, the solution is just pay out grandma's retirement. How much does she actually need? Finance it and get new ideas in. But that's just me personally.
And there's no, so the thought is, or the focus is all on the big money accounts.
Right.
So a lot of that.
The top 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But I still have friends that are there. And it seems like every year it's why we're actually going to get a raise this year. So they're thinking that they're going to, and then nope, we didn't get it.
Yeah.
Well, so what's the incentive?
Yeah.
What are you? You're overworking and
purpose.
Yeah. Purpose.
That's what they're
banking
their
entirely.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Which can
and you
work,
have to
which
find
can
it.
work.
Nobody's
right.
telling you.
That's the catch, right?
Right.
You can work
It's not
for a
healthy.
lower rate of pay. People do it all the time
Absolutely.
in charitable environments.
Yeah.
When people go
Altruism.
on mission work, right?
Yeah.
If it's completely unpaid, some of the stuff that Katie had done in her college years, right? Completely unpaid, but the purpose was very, very clear.
Yes.
That's not that hard to convince people to want to be a part of.
No, that's what
there's
grew,
a lot of
that's what
value
grew
in it.
our side.
Right.
Altruism grew the veterinary profession for almost 30
There's
years.
nothing wrong with working with altruistic intention.
Absolutely.
However, when the structure that you're in is we're actually going to value economic motivation, never mind.
Yes.
We're not going to do that anymore. So you're
We're not going to do this other thing either.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not going to give you the altruism side, and then we're going to promise as a means of just basically just go away. We'll pay you more.
Yeah.
No, we're actually not going to do that either. Well, okay. So what else do I got? The culture is, it's the family,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
now the only reason I'm here is I can't leave these people in the deep water,
Right.
Because they're going to drown.
Yeah. And fear of what's out there because you're programmed to think that you have it good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I work in a hospital.
Right. Right. No, and I think that, yeah, exactly. We actually, to that end, not to say that we program people. But for us, like that's part of why
We definitely program
yes.
people.
But that's why we let go of the leash, right?
Yeah.
So if we have someone who thinks it is better somewhere else, it's like, please, by all means, go and find it. You know,
Right.
if you can, seek fulfillment and you can seek some level of purpose in some other location, by all means, please do it. And I think that's where, like you said, if it's like, it's like, well, you can't find anything better anywhere else. It's like, that's a little bit different.
And it's a safe conversation within PAW, to even mention that in the other, places of employment, like, okay, well, now you're going to be treated completely different.
Oh, right.
And now
right.
it's all going to really get pointed out.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's going to be difficult for you to work here.
Yeah. No, for us, it's like, okay, so my perspective on that is if you are of the mindset that you're going to find something better somewhere else, well, what is it that you're actually looking for?
Right.
And why is it that we think we don't have
Yeah.
it?
What
and then
void is it?
Yeah, right, exactly. And then that's where it's like, oh, well, you're right. We actually probably could improve that process, and then you would actually be able to gain, fulfillment internally. And we just missed the mark on that one. So that's why I think you talk about the comfortable thing. It's like when we talk about our education system, we talk about all of our performance review stuff. It's basically that two-way conversation where it's just like, okay, if you're actually seeing that we're doing something wrong, please. If you see that we are doing something wrong, please tell us. Yeah. We will also do the same way. If we see where we do have a process in place, because I feel like coming into the end of 2019, I feel like that's starting to become a little bit more prevalent where we have policy in place for solutions.
Yeah.
People just aren't clear on it.
Yeah.
Or they're just,
like when I get the call on Friday morning of just from Katie, where it's like, please walk me through this problem because I want to make sure that our process is actually the solution.
Yes.
I mean, that's happened probably 4 or 5 times in the last few weeks where it's
Yeah.
like, no, if they would have just done it the way that it is written,
Yeah.
it probably would have gone just fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a very real.
Yes.
But the mindset is, what's the solution?
Yeah.
Right. It's
Right.
not how do I go and just tell this person
reprimand
how they
this
suck.
person, they did it terribly.
Yeah.
Right. Again, that's the growth mindset though.
Yeah.
So I think it's, like you think Rachel said, it's the comfortable conversation
Yeah.
that if there is and appears to be broken process, like, if you aren't following, if it appears a process is broken, is it actually broken or do you not have clarity on it?
Yeah.
That's
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually what kind of then leads into, some of the breakthroughs, of course, in our organization that I know that you have had, but which I mean, we can touch on here in a few minutes, but at least coming out of the hospital setting and then moving over to the government, kind of the government side of things. I mean, that transition, I think, happened somewhat naturally because I think it was like a word of mouth thing.
Yep. So within the hospital, we had a state worker. So when I did the financial counseling, one of the pieces was we had to get the patients, if they were self-pay or no insurance, we had to get them to apply for, Medicaid or for the state medical.
Sure.
And build that relationship with that on-site worker.
Sure.
And really realized, that's actually something that I would really like to be a part of.
Gotcha.
So she, that was my in. I got in with the state, took a couple years. But going over there, it was like, this is my career.
Right.
I'm 20, how old was I? 25, 26.
Maybe. Yeah.
Wow, I got it good. Great benefits, great pay, great,
Right.
people
coming
are nice.
Coming out of that hospital setting. So it was basically, what did I lack in this particular job? And oh crap, while what I'm lacking in this particular job can be fulfilled in this other job, it's like, all right, well, perfect. I got this knocked down, but then at what cost?
Right. Yep. And that took about a year.
to find the expense side of that.
Because people would be, talking trash or whatever. This is unfair, blah, blah. It's like, why would they be talking like that? Like, holy moly, like really some opportunity here, you know? And then the veil comes off.
Yeah.
And then you start to see the dynamics and the dysfunction and all of the areas that could improve easily.
Yep. And I think it's, when we start to come back to...
But then drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Right.
And then...
Right. You're forced to.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You see it, but also...
Am I seeing what I'm seeing?
Yeah. And I think that's when we come into page 3 of section 1.2, just the assign and accountability side with the victim and rescuer and so on and so forth. I feel like that exists in many, many settings, but is almost intentionally perpetuated in a government type job, where it's as long as we have people essentially just kind of pointing the finger with some level of consistency, like you said, some of that dysfunction, as long as everyone's kind of effectively passing the buck in some regard, then it's really no one person's fault. It's just we're all...
If everybody talks about it and brings each other down,
Yes. Yeah.
then...
Right. Right.
Let's just mute. There's just a shared sense of depression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
there's
both, my manager and the director of the last office I was working for, it was always expressed that I was one of the unique employees because I didn't let other people cloud their experiences or what they were going through, because a lot of it was, well, yeah, but you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
So that's
the accountability
why
component.
Huge.
Yeah, yeah.
And not really realizing what that was, but then also seeing my side of, now coming into PAW and, that grooming that I had,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
accountability and just all of the dysfunction in it.
Yeah, I think when you naturally made the transition to PAW, I think that was one of the big things when we actually you were still on the consultation side. I was like, I'm kind of hearing stuff with Rachel. I think we got a position for her here, because at that time we had like 3 separate add-on roles that we were like, wow, we could probably have one person do all 3 of these things. But I think what I had attached to was I guess what I would refer to as natural accountability. So natural accountability, of course, we have a very significant structure in place. I don't think until we found the ladder, and I don't remember how Kitty found that, but anyway, how we got the ladder, how we ended up moving to the assigning accountability. So essentially what is section 1.2 of our ERT, we have it very much in process. So for us, it makes the conversation much easier, and it makes it much easier to teach it. But I think that's one of the things that I've always banked on with you as an employee is I'm like, no, she has natural accountability. But to go from natural accountability to then what we have is super highball accountability, where every process, at least in some capacity, we can relate back to core values, lack of core values, or at least in some capacity. I think, quote unquote, the breakthroughs that we had alluded to before this podcast is it was basically just going through the check mark that is those steps, which traditionally we would have, now we have with our education system, a tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. We now have kind of a stop point at 40 hours, 90 days, So now again, we have we have better clarity now on what those are. But I guess from I don't want to say outsider looking in, because certainly you're an insider, but coming in from a government side, corporatized side to then sort of our level of accountability. I mean, how does it sit? Does it feel forced, or is it still more like it's like, oh, well, that makes sense?
The process to break me into
understanding.
Yeah, was exhausting.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yes. But 100% necessary.
Yeah.
Because leaving Michigan, it's so different over in Michigan to Wisconsin, and coming here was very aggressive, and I was very aggressive.
Oh, and just the lifestyle of a Michigander.
Yes. And
yes,
the every job I had was so cutthroat.
Yeah.
And backstabbing, and just it was just how can I get to the top?
I like this last time that you went back to Michigan, just on like a family trip or whatever, and like then coming back to Wisconsin. It's like you had
I was just
like
talking to Marco about that last night.
Yeah, it was like a 3-week detox process.
God, it was terrible. And I finally I said to Carlo, I was like, I understand why you don't go home now.
Yeah.
Because it is...
Everyone's just so mean.
Yeah.
It's so, you go from the speed limits. First of all, the speed limits got upped over in Michigan to 75.
Okay.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So that's base mile per hour.
Right.
So it's like
that's
people
the
are...
speed mandatory.
I was going 85 the whole time I was home.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you come back here and it's like there's nothing over 65.
I was going to say, I dawdle now.
Yeah.
I'm white knuckling because I can't go any faster.
Yeah.
But then everything, but it's just, it's so aggressive over there, you know. You can't get your card out of your wallet fast enough through checkout.
At the checkout.
You can't, can't look at anybody's kid. Everybody here is like,
yeah. Yeah, definitely Wausau. I mean, Wausau is a very, very family
It
environment.
is.
It is very enjoyable in that regard. But
Yeah.
There's pluses and minuses to
There
this.
are.
Yes,
There
yes.
are.
We are still
Yeah.
probably culturally in about the 80s. So, you know, the amenities were probably early 90s amenities right now, you know.
But what I noticed too, or what what I had said to Mark last night was it's just what it is. Like
Yeah.
the people here, it's just
There's an
you
acceptance factor.
can't get mad because then it's why are they mad?
Right.
Like, then you're you're the jerk. You know, it's just
There's a lot of victims looking for persecutors.
Yes.
But
yes.
the way that I've always described this area is it is well populated with people with concrete shoes, where it's like, no, this is just where it is. Like, this is where I stay. And it comes down. I know that there's, from a community leadership perspective, it's just perpetuated horribly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, look at the mall.
Yeah.
Come on.
Mall.
Come on.
Yeah.
Mall.
Come on.
Right.
And
Right.
for those that are not from this area, they're going to be like, you have a mall?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was
Sort
really
of.
excited. I was
Sort of.
I was looking, moved here and was looking
have
for
the
something.
building.
Yeah.
Go to the mall. We have a mall
Yeah. Right downtown.
right. But it's that
right
mindset.
downtown.
Yeah.
So it's like Grand Rapids by no means is like
Yeah.
big city, but it's
Yeah.
big
It's bigger.
city.
Yeah. Oh, it's
You
compared to
know,
Wausau, it
yeah.
definitely is.
But
So to answer the question,
Yes, yes,
so the
coming back to it.
transition to,
Yeah, that happens.
to,
That
yeah,
happens.
to come here and with the, because of the transition for coming into our accountability, right? Is that
Yeah.
what we
Yes,
were?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that
I
process,
forgot, but yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
then I got it, guys.
Yeah.
That process was, it was tough, but it wasn't. It was only tough because I didn't know what was happening, and I wasn't open. I don't think I couldn't be open because I didn't even know I was not being open. Here
Right.
I am thinking, no, this is how it. I understand it. I understand it. Because I am accountable, thinking that that's the whole piece to it.
Yeah.
But then,
In a very
it was-
aggressive setting. Like you said, there's kind
Correct.
of a cutthroat component
Yeah.
to it. You know,
Yeah.
what is this person,
Yeah.
who
I'll
are
take
they?
ownership for my part.
Yeah.
But what the heck?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
why isn't this other part?
Yeah.
Or just let it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let it go, but don't.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. That was, I
You
think
know.
that was one of our, that was actually, I think one of the first breakthroughs was essentially the foundation of the forgiveness model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And saying like, again, I think it's not a natural feeling for us to actually forgive someone. And I think that was, again, what we talk about multiple times about the forgiveness model is like you can forgive someone but not lose the accountability component. But that is vastly different than forgiving someone but not really forgiving them.
Yeah.
Like that's two totally different things. There's accountability
Yes.
on behavior where it's like, okay, if you are showing, if this individual is doing the same behavior repeatedly, like there should be steps involved to maintain accountability on this negative behavior.
Which
But
is where my other jobs fell off.
yes,
You know.
yes, yeah. But the forgiveness part, as Ben had said, it's the release of the emotional component.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Really, and then
yeah.
really let.
Yeah.
So I think with actually when I got to the point of the second breakthrough, this last one or whatever, that was a real personal breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because in
Yes.
order to be accountable, to follow the whole model within the clinic or within a professional setting, you really have to adjust your personal mindset.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just that this is how I have to work at
PAW, yeah.
No. This is actually, this is really beneficial for life.
Yes. Yes.
like-
we would like to think so, but
Yeah.
yes. Well, and that's, how many times we've said on many podcasts, it's fix yourself.
Yeah.
Once you fix yourself, then you can fix the room, fix
Yeah.
the clinic, fix the community, so on and so forth. Is like, that's the base. If one of your barriers is actually yourself, that's it. Like you actually aren't going to be able to get
Right.
past that. And that's why, again, I think when we start to come to employees at the 90 days or the twice a year, tier 3 is the twice a year type things. That's where, again, we just sort of like release the leash, where it's like, listen, we're kind of showing you the way, but in some capacity, we aren't therapists.
Yeah.
And that, I think,
We had that Andy and I had that conversation yesterday at a 90-day where it was basically, all right, now you know it well.
Yeah.
Now you understand how this is going to impact you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're ready, willing, and able to tell you how to do it really, really well on a continuous basis. However, this is the fork in the road where you make the decision. I'm not holding on anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to hold your hand to this point anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, the training wheels are off.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
And,
Showtime.
ultimately it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
But that's basically how those start.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it makes it
That's what being
equal,
an
though.
adult is.
Yeah. It is. She said it's what's being an adult.
You know.
You know, part of it.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
but it comes back to the two halves of equality. So if we talk about the, again, the foundation of the education system is equal halves between the mentor and the mentee, just like with, the foundation of the other culture and core values is forgiveness. When you talk about two equal halves, that's that exact point, is that if you as an individual are unwilling to make yourself better as an individual, you actually don't have a place here. And we're not actually saying I know we kind of made a joke a few minutes ago about like we brainwash people, but like we do it in a way that makes them better. It takes the cultural shit that we all learn in this nation on everyone wants to be a victim. Like that is really what the story of most reality television
it gives
is.
us self-control.
Oh yeah.
There was definitely I'll say within this last year with the whole coming into PAW, coming into whole new life.
Yeah,
over
yeah,
here.
absolutely. Yeah.
Having to adjust to everything, that is
child
here.
care to
all of it.
Yeah.
There's really I forget where we were going with that now.
Yeah.
It's super easy to find the places in life where people are wronging you.
Yeah.
And it's not forced, but it's also not optional. When you work at PAW, like your mindset is going to switch to an accountable nature, and you're going to find the power in your life to just make the difference on things that's self-control. And that's exactly what it is. You start to take on the things that you can grab onto. It's like, I'm just going to make them better. Right?
And that's a creator. That's empowerment. Because the victim mentality is an individual who's convinced that they are powerless and at the mercy of life's events.
Right.
Like that is self-control. We're not saying self-control from the perspective of like control your emotions and don't have that. It's not that level of self-control. It's like, oh shit, there is actually a lot of stuff that I do have power over.
Yeah, that was a big still is something that I work through.
Yeah.
Because having the confidence to make those decisions in my roles.
And
coming
comfortable
from
failure with those decisions.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And having those failures be safe.
Yeah.
Not having it. Yeah. Is that with the past jobs, it was, okay, here is what you have to get done.
Yeah.
Here's all the steps. Here's all the marks you have to make, hit or whatever.
Yeah. Production. Or
So
whatever it is. Yeah.
coming here and it's, okay, so these are your roles. Here's your
10 list of big to-do things.
but not even. It was here's
Yeah.
do it, and it was. But what do you want me to do for each of them?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what do you So there's a lot of hand holding I was expecting.
Yeah.
Because with the development of PAW, it was kind of like, what direction are. Okay, so you tell me what you want me to do, and I'll go do it.
Yeah.
But then when things are coming in, it's like, okay, well, now I have to have somebody really approve this idea that I have. Oh, maybe I shouldn't put my ideas out there. Maybe I shouldn't. So when those things come up, it's like, oh, I can run with this. I have. Okay, I can.
Yeah.
But that took some time.
It takes time.
It's
definitely,
and it is a continuous thing too, because you work. For those that are unaware, you and I interface often on that sort of stuff. And like for me, I probably get really irritating to you sometimes because I never really provide any direction. Like, and I freely admit it.
Oh, ask me any question ever.
Well, see, and that's what I'm used to. So it's like, no, it really doesn't. Is that how you are? Because I grew up with.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that I say it is because like I basically just push you into just try it.
Yeah.
Right. That to me, it's like I have it's not in us. It's just full level of assumption, I should say, where it's like, if you fall on your face, you're going to have 8 people bending over to help pick you up.
And that's where I'm at.
Right.
So it's like, I'm good with the whole, go for it, run for it. And then when that feedback comes back, or when you get the reaction or response or whatever back, and it's like, well, I didn't want that. No, that's not what I was expecting at all.
Right.
So, so it's like that whole piece of,
Yeah.
It's tough to be willing to be wrong.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that very, very often. Most of the time, I just don't like. I'll tell people I'm not a know-it-all. I'm just a know-a-lot.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really, really egotistical.
Yeah.
However, I typically just don't say anything if I don't know what I'm talking about. Versus with you actually put yourself out there more, and then it's like there's a desire inside for you to just have it right the first time, because it feels really good to be like, man, I really middled that one.
Yeah, I really want this to, succeed.
No. Yeah, I'm not on that. I'm like I intentionally I go for the numbers. I'm gonna try something 5 different ways because I know of the 5 one's gonna hit.
Yeah.
So but
But
again,
the interesting, like, that comes from your experience probably in medicine.
yeah.
Because
Yeah,
if you
case management, yeah.
if you miss on a diagnostic,
Yeah.
like, well, I know what I don't know.
Yeah.
And now I just move on from there.
Yeah.
And in the trial and error, that's what science is.
Absolutely.
Whereas for Rachel and I being more on a business administration type side, it's like, no, we're working on budgets here. Don't miss.
Yeah.
Because if you miss, you're gonna get fired.
Yeah.
Right?
Previously, yeah. Well, and no, I agree with you. I think the medicine part is a huge thing, but I think there's probably the natural tendency, meaning I think medicine is a way in which I can apply that mindset comfortably. So for me, it's the same thing. It's like, all right, you exactly said, like, whether this diagnostic path or this treatment strategy, again, what has made me a better doctor is focusing on the middle 60% of clientele. If all you're doing is focusing on the top 1%, 5%, 20%, which is the push of our profession, especially at the education level where it's like specialize, it's like you are so kind of tapered into a clientele that financially can support all of your brain ideas.
Right.
And it has more to do with like your heart ideas, and just saying, like, you have to be able to gut some of this stuff out. And again, creating a comfortable environment to fail. That's what we're talking about.
Right. And then you have to have the gumption
Yes.
to go look at the person that didn't want you to miss the first time.
Yes.
And say, this didn't do it.
Yeah.
I need to do the next one.
Yes.
Like, we now know that we have an absence of assuredness,
Yes.
which points us in a direction.
Yes.
So therefore, I'm going to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
It's not the I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was actually just talking about that in that 90 day the
yeah.
other day. I was like, don't apologize for wait times.
Yeah.
Just be thankful that they're willing to continue to play the game, and that's kind of the same thing, right? Like, we're not here to railroad you and take all your money.
No.
However, like, sometimes they're gonna miss. Sometimes our triage order is gonna get adjusted. Sometimes our diagnostics aren't gonna be the correct ones.
Yeah.
But it's still going in a positive direction.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for people to grab onto.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I think, one of my coined phrases for operating within the middle 60% is that when you're presented with a problem, you get 3 rule outs in 1 test. So that is very, very difficult to cone down years of education and years of experience to be like, you get basically 3 shots and 1 way to differentiate all 3, But again, I think that when you talk about, you said, triage to these other things, it is very much a learned skill set, not just from a medicine standpoint, but again, for me, I think where all of this came from was us just talking about wanting to hit the nail on the head the first time, or just knowing that you need 1 nail to hit and you got 5 tries. So.
Then that kind of leads to the other side that I like to refer to. When we look at Section 1.2, ultimately it sounds really weird, but I never want to use it. I think very early on, I had talked about the fact that I actually never want to hold people accountable, because if I never have to hold people accountable, we're fulfilling our core values and serving the patient. Therefore, there's no discussion to be had there. Just keep doing what you're doing.
You don't have to hold them to anything. They are just doing it.
Right. And I think that kind of leans more towards, your mindset on that, where it's like, that's just ultimately what I want to do. Like, I don't really want to have to go through the process, because I just want to do it right the first time. It's not because of a self-defense mechanism. It's not because I'm not willing to be accountable. It's just I just want to do it well. And it's internally frustrating, and this you can agree with me or not, but internally frustrating to be wrong, because you understand that potentially inefficiencies in the interim were created.
Yeah.
It's all part of the game, though.
Right. But
Yeah.
you bite those
Yeah.
just so you're better moving forward.
Right. Yeah.
But that's a hard, especially when you come from a massive corporate structure of a hospital and then into state level government. Right. Oof. I don't know. I've never had those conversations, but I'm guessing that you were kind of.
It's been almost 2 years, and I'm still detoxing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is. It's a whole mental health.
Yeah.
You know, it's you want to talk about brainwashing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's.
And that's why I think a big focus on our education system is trying to catch people as young as we can in the career.
Yeah.
You know, because we know at its core that we have solutions.
And there I was.
Yeah.
You know. So
Right. Yeah, we have solutions to almost everything, almost every problem that we've come across. We've been able to either create solutions, or if we, you know, or we either had existing solutions or we're able to create new solutions.
Yeah.
It's way easier to implement those in those who aren't already broken. You know.
Yeah.
You know. So
Yeah.
it's. But I think part of, and you know, certainly having you on today, and you know, kind of talking about just a little bit your experience and how it relates to the veterinary profession as well. It's that it is possible. It
100%.
takes work, and you have to be willing to do it, you know, but it is very much possible to look at, even from a government to a large corporation, to these things that they are very they're not easy to implement, but I wouldn't say they're particularly complex. I think I come back to that a lot, is that it's there when you get back down to it. One of my buddies, Jeff, because I'm kind of talking about a lot of this stuff, and I think I talked about it last week. He was like, he shot me a text. He's like, I've been listening to your podcast, and he's like, you know, I'm through it, and I'm, you know, da, da, da. He's like, I don't want to actually like devalue what it is you're doing. He's like, but once you understand it, he's like, it's actually really, really simple stuff.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I know.
That was my last breakthrough.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I just, if this is not what I'm going to get, just tell me. And then it was, click, 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 click,
Yeah.
click. It all
Everything
makes
else
sense.
falls into play.
You
Yep.
know, so, yeah.
And that's the thing. I think, you know, for us, again, they are simple. They are sort of networked together.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of complexity to it. I think the complexity comes in the human element, because you have to sort of like unwind someone to be able to wind them back up.
And not even that, yes, because I think, 100% I agree.
Yep.
And there's the component of, are they capable of actually understanding this?
Correct. Yes.
You know, not
Yes.
necessarily that they're broken to the point where they're not going to, but are they personally with you know, able to do those things?
Yeah. Dr. Janessa referred to it as the noose. Instead of, I wasn't leading her with a leash, I was leading her with a noose. You know.
There's that.
Yes. And it's again, part of it is because I truly and wholeheartedly believe that we can take anyone from anywhere in their career and actually get them to the high level of functionality, confidence, and competence, and be able to handle a lot of the things that we have in place. They just have to be willing to do it.
Yeah.
I think
I think obviously I have an advantage, you know, with you know, being your sister coming into, and there was already that trust that's been there, you know, because
correct.
there's that
Yes.
bond,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
But then being in that dark, you know, space within the whole transition of, what the heck, what's wrong with this isn't
Something
Carlo.
doesn't seem right. Right.
Yeah, this doesn't, you know, so then having that mistrust, that period of mistrust, and then, you know, and then it coming back around, like, so I was the asshole.
Yeah.
But that's why we put so much of an emphasis on essentially avoiding the creation of a family structure at your business.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that
coming
was
back to full circle.
Yes. That was probably, you know, because again, I was working for the consulting company when you came on. It was like, this is my biggest concern, right? We're working our butts off on all this accountability and culture stuff, and now you're going to bring an actual family member in.
What if it goes south?
Exactly.
Right.
Because there's one, like, how is this going to impact the business? But two, how is this going to impact your family? And
Right.
and you have the opportunity to suck on both when you do this. And I probably, that was probably 5 or 6 hours of discussion between two meetings where it's like, is this the right thing to do?
Yeah. See, and I had bet on natural accountability.
Yeah.
That was where
Yeah.
that's where I put my, that's actually where I put my money, because I had value in that and saying, no, I know it's probably not going to be easy. However, we do have someone in need who I do believe can fulfill the job tasks we have appropriately. There is natural accountability there, but I also know she's a hot-blooded Italian. So there's going to be like a lot.
Moments.
There's going to be times where that is more difficult. It's the same thing with like Dr. Janessa, where it's like, I know this isn't going to be the easiest process, because I mean, that ended up being 8 months, 10 months, but it's still banking on the drive towards betterment and ultimately fulfillment.
Right.
Yeah, I think the separation of family and like professional work, so when there are, heated things that are happening or whatnot, whether it's Carlo or Katie or whatnot, it's okay, that's work. And then coming over for dinner, absolutely doesn't affect it.
Yeah,
So
we have a really good ability to separate church and state.
Yeah.
We got a really good.
Yeah.
Most people don't, by the way.
Yeah.
It wasn't a client that I was directly involved with, but the one that I will never forget was we worked with a funeral home that was mom, dad, and their 2 sons. The most dysfunction I saw in an entire business.
Yeah.
And it had zero to do with the trade, by the way. It just happened to be what they did.
Yeah, the cultural element. Yeah.
The first meeting that we had with them, it was an hour of yelling and 2 hours of crying.
Okay.
That's how it typically goes.
Yeah.
And that's what, so then you look at the typical structure of, I want to create this family environment.
Yeah.
You're just leading yourself to an hour of yelling and 2 hours of crying.
Yeah. See, and I actually think, again, because I think this is going to speak to a lot of people out there who work in these traditional family type environments. My personal perspective is that the family work environment has no place. And I'll say that cautiously, because I know that may be a trigger for some people, but I say it because
Are you saying I'm some people?
Yeah, no, not you. Just in general, the listeners, the world.
Are you triggered?
Yeah, no, yes. No, I believe that that traditional sense of a family environment at work is it's non-functional to the extent that it's dysfunctional. And that being said, I feel, and I think this is what we're in the process of achieving, at least in some capacity, you can actually have a stronger bond with your employees, with your coworkers, with the other people around you, in this type of an environment, which supersedes that of a family connection. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, they say, blood is thicker than water, and so on and so forth. It's like, they say, you can choose your friends, but not your family. But I think if we realistically look at how we operate on a day-to-day basis in a social setting within this country, I would argue that most people have a tighter bond with their friends than they have a tighter bond with their family.
Yeah, 100%.
So why is it that we are perpetuating a work environment where we are trying to have a tight family bond when most people don't even have that in their social lives? Why aren't we creating a work environment that is focused on purpose, focused on well-being, focused on very tight connections in a professional setting that's actually going to supersede that of a family clinical setting?
Right.
That's the future. So I think we're damn near close to having achieved that. But
Carlo, that's not deep.
Yeah, right.
That's the response.
Yeah. Right.
But that's we'll go into my bucket method another day.
Yes, sure.
We'll get into that. But
next time we're rounding out.
no, it's
round out this cast anyway. But
It's pretty easy to once the whole accountability model and the culture and everything within PAW, when that trust is there, when the communication's there, when you have employees that are open to growing for themselves and
growth mindset.
It's like, why wouldn't it work? So to be able to surrender to, okay, fine, I'm just gonna
I like that word.
Surrender.
That's a good word.
No, 100%. That's what that's how I feel, because there was I had a softball coach growing up that was I'm going to break you down and then break you down to build you up.
Yeah.
That was a whole 2 weeks of, they better not be breaking me down to build me up. That is that's mind, but then it was,
No, our profession
I get
historically
it.
just
I
breaks
get
you
it.
down and leaves you. Yeah.
Right, which is what I've been used to,
Yeah.
with
No, we
other,
completely sidestep the whole process.
Yeah.
It is not a breakdown. It is not a build up.
it doesn't fit in anything
No.
that I'm used to.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest, because that was turned off. That whole,
Yeah.
what do you mean this is
Yeah.
Why would they do
Yeah.
that? Oh, they're doing them because that's how you should do it.
Yes.
I get
Yes.
it.
Right.
This is how it should.
Coming back to the
You mean
simple
I'm
answer,
actually
that's
getting
just
that?
how you should do it.
Yeah,
It's
you
the
know.
third path, right? So
Right.
it's we say the traditional path, the corporate path, and then the PAW path. That's what we're talking about. Is
Yeah.
it should be a very natural process where there is it's just that
Yeah.
there's not a build down or there's not a tear down to build up that doesn't have any place.
Yeah.
It's no, we're just going to show you the way.
Yeah.
You
And,
can
a lot of,
choose to walk it.
yeah, and a lot of these tools are I mean, I've only been here for almost 2 years or whatever, but it's they're fairly new tools.
Correct.
you
In
know?
writing, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to
Yep.
have right.
Yep.
And to to push those, I'm like, this is it's
Yeah.
developed. So to have a whole wide range of employees that have been there for a really long time,
Yeah.
to are coming on, they've been there short periods of time and whatnot.
Yeah.
It'd be foolish to say that that people employees or whatever don't vent or they don't
Sure.
come to
Yeah.
so it's like now that I have an understanding for this, God, that whole piece of self-control and having that power of I do understand this, so
Yeah.
they come and it's like, okay, but do you understand the forgiveness model piece to
Yeah.
it? Like, this is why it's important. This is the 7-hour conversation that I had
Yeah.
with Carlo that affected me, that had my breakthrough, and then
Yeah.
it has been,
Yeah.
they had an employee that was doing that and it was, oh,
Yep.
okay, no, you're right. I should,
Yeah.
and then so it's a whole,
Yeah. And that's all part of the kind of teach it part of
Yeah.
our education system, sort of that fourth type tier is being like, when you've had those breakthroughs, when you understand process, it becomes that much more transparent when you find people who don't have the understanding and don't have the process.
Don't want to.
And that is the administrative part, because
Right.
then we start to undercover when they don't want it.
Yeah.
And then there's no place for that, because there's a difference between, like I said, clarity and competency. It's like, some people you just hold up the mirror. You just, like we said it before, you just hold up the mirror and this is who you are, right? And we're saying that this is how you are functioning.
This is how you're affecting
Yeah,
this.
all of it, yeah.
Right.
And for us, it comes back to serving the patient, because again, you can say you're affecting through culture and all these other ways, but in the end, ultimately, it's affecting how in our ability to actually care for the reason why we're here.
Right.
And that, I think, has been taking the writing off of the wall, as we said it. So
I think too, like with the with my past employments, it's, you got called into the principal's office and
Yes.
it was,
Yeah.
you're not going to be working here anymore.
Yeah.
But
Right.
it's like anybody that doesn't work, I mean, from the few that I know that don't work at PAW anymore, that was their decision.
ultimately,
I mean,
Yeah.
everything is done to help an individual grow, but it's
yeah, because we don't give up.
No.
Like that's the whole part.
No,
Like if we have
that's the exhausting part.
Well, but part of it is, it's like, if we see that someone has that drive, though, like
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like we don't necessarily, like, we are willing to hold on to the leash, but the thing is we don't always take the same path.
Yeah.
So it's, as long as we're on the same path and we're still holding a leash, we'll take the longer path, because we know that we're getting back to the end of the road, and where it's going to be the same path that everyone else is on. You may just have to deviate out in order to come back. The difference is then when you have someone who just doesn't want to walk the path, and that is then, like Ben has said, where my leash is considerably longer than most. That's where I've learned to essentially just let go. It's like, go run in the woods, then, go be wild child.
Yeah, we're exceptionally clear on what the path is.
Yes.
And that's the thing when it was probably 5 or 6 episodes ago, like the idea of know what it means to fire fast.
Yes.
Because what fire fast typically turns into is, well, they didn't understand the path because I took it for granted and I didn't teach them what it was, and that means they just don't fit here.
Yes.
Which is
not clearly
right.
different. Yes.
It's no, you give them every opportunity to go down the path, and when they want to pull away after knowing what it is, now you have to fire fast.
Yes.
Because now you understand with an objective level of understanding, they're not going to fit here.
Yes.
Everyone else that's here understands the path and is working really, really hard to stay within the curbs. This person wants to go run off in the woods. It's either I'm going to have to put way too much energy holding on to this, and it's just going to be like no one's going to really appreciate it, and I'm just going to get stressed out, or I just let them go and I continue to focus on the ones that want to be here.
Right, and that's you know, to have an environment that there's always room for progression. You know, so to come from a background of this person is untouchable. Or this is, they know all of it. They're comfy with where they're at. There's always room for improvement. So everybody is evolving, which is evolving, the everything.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot to work on. There's a lot to work on everywhere.
Yeah. Once you can grasp it, that's always within life, but then to have a group of people that are going to, they want you to chase it with them, growing up, and just a piece that has always kind of been, a fault of mine is always seeing the potential in people and individuals. And I think
it's a hard lesson to unlearn.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, the lesson is being able to let that potential go.
Yeah, and the one
don't
piece
stop
I wasn't
seeing it.
right. But the one piece that I wasn't used to having, and that I think was a big barrier for me was, wow, they see potential in me.
Oh, sure. Yes.
So it was. I haven't had anybody see. They verbalize potential,
Yeah,
but there's been no action on it.
Correct.
So
it's part of the brainwash to say, well,
Yes.
you can do great, continue to work here. You can do right. A raise might come someday. Continue to work here. So it's
you'd be really good at this job.
Yeah. We'll talk about it.
It's not going to open.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
20-year tenure.
Right.
Yeah. So, but so and I think that comes back to our one of our grids we talked about is the performance and potential. So that's kind of that juggle on saying when we see the potential and we see the opportunity for performance. It's it's.
But you wouldn't. But I guess what I'm coming back around to is that there wouldn't be that time. You wouldn't put that time into an individual unless one you wanted them there, and two you saw that they would have. It would be benefit to having them there.
Correct.
For both the business and for themselves.
Absolutely.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're saying like, no, that's huge.
The stuff that Carlo and I just take for granted because it's just been happening for years. It's like,
meanwhile, I'm crying at night, like, I get it.
I get it. I think I can
happy
do
tears.
great.
If I get it, they'll leave me alone for a minute.
Nope. That's not how that works. No, we don't stop. Constant. So, all right. Well, I think that's pretty good though, overall for our podcast today.
Yeah. You got to run. You're a little late.
Yeah.
So,
but I think, in general, I think as far as the stop point's concerned, I mean, it's like I said, that was kind of my whole goal was just to kind of get kind of this outside experience. And I think the thing that I like is outside non-veterinary experience to be like, no, like that is the color of the grass on that side of the fence, to say that. But at its core, there are a lot of very like cultural elements that even though a lot of those experiences come from the human side, culturally, it's kind of the same type of grass on our side. We're just saying, well, it's not really greener on either side, but for us, we found the path to the Greenland, so it's just saying that's kind of how we're different. So, but thanks for coming today.
Hey,
thanks, Rachel.
Thanks.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll get you on some more.
Thank
We got
you.
maybe once we get into the new studio, but ooh.
That's there. I mean, the
It's
wood's
like 3
there.
months out. Yeah, the wood is there. It is. Yes. So okay. All right, guys. We'll see you next week.